The accomplished sports broadcaster of the past, the late, great David Coleman, immediately comes to mind, always advised fledglings learning his trade never to sound like a fan during an interview. In introducing my guest today for Extraordinary Tales in Extraordinary Times, I'm working hard not to ignore Coleman's advice, and I have to tell you, it's not going to be easy. So my guest today set and still holds the British athletics records in the 800 and the 1,000 metres. She's a double Olympic and Commonwealth champion and multiple medalist at European and World Championships. This includes her incredible double win in the 8 and 1,500 metres at the 2004 Olympic Games in Athens, becoming the first Briton in over 80 years to do so. After her Olympic success, she won BBC Sports Personality of the Year, European and World Athlete of the Year, and of course was honoured with a damehood from the Queen. Raised by her mum on a council estate in Kent, she pursued a talent at running from the age of 12, becoming mini youth Olympic champion by the age of 17. However, a month before her 18th birthday, she left professional athletics to pursue her other dream, to be in the British Army. She became an HGV driver and then a physical training instructor before being awarded an MBE for services to the Army in 1998. Her athletic career was overshadowed with repeated injury and disappointment. Recurring physical injuries contributed to periods of clinical depression and self-harm that continued to affect her even in the year of her Olympic double win. Dedicating her career after professional sport to guiding disadvantaged young people, getting their lives back on track by using world-class athletes to engage, enable, and empower. She is now a global inspirational speaker, an honorary colonel with the Royal Armoured Corps Training Regiment, and encourages the same philosophy that she lives by. Nothing is impossible. My guest today is Colonel Dame Kelly Holmes, but Kelly, if I may, I'm so pleased you could join us today.
Oh, hello, Seb. Thank you so much.
Listen, there is probably only one place to start, and of course it has to be at the very height of topicality. I'm hoping many of the people listening to us today are probably unaware that you have been a COVID-19 victim. How are you doing?
Oh, gosh, yes, I am. Oh, I'm not sure if that's something to celebrate now or to wish I hadn't. No, I'm doing much better, thanks, Seb. I did suffer, not as much as so many people, very lucky, obviously we know that, but yeah, I was sort of down and out for about 2.5 weeks. Extreme body pains, headaches, so yeah, it wasn't a great time, but I'm through it, so all good.
Well, this must have been a challenge, because every time I've seen you, particularly over the lockdown months and pretty much by the hour somewhere on a website, you've been putting people through the most excruciating exercises, so you must have had to sit out for a bit.
Yeah, I did. And that's been quite strange. And also I had you know about these operations on my Achilles and my heel bone in July. So I've had like a 4-month period, which even though I've kept fit and I've still been taking live classes, I was still taking them with my plaster on, to be fair. But this last, 3.5, nearly 4 weeks now, I haven't done hardly anything, and it's now driving me insane. So I'm desperate to get myself back in the driving seat and back fit.
But that must be reminiscent in a way, or a sort of stark reminder of the time that, well, you and we've all had out of athletics, where you've just been sort of sidelined. It's just frustration, isn't it? That you just can't do anything physical. It's not even wanting to race. It's just that outlet of exercise.
Yeah, it really is. It's just, keeping fit, it just makes you feel good. And as much these days, I have to say, for your head. But, I'm still interacting with people on social media and I'm giving them things to do. So it's still making me feel good. Yeah, I'm getting the power off of them.
Listen, if we had to start with the topicality, sadly, of COVID, there is probably only one place I can start in this conversation. And I have to tell you, I'm trying hard not to be a fan throughout this, although, as you know, I'm a fully paid up member of your fan club. I want to take you back to the obvious point in your career, which was Athens, because I was privileged to watch you compete in Sydney 4 years earlier, and I know from conversations at the time and public utterances that you said you were only one injury away from calling it a day, even in the lead up to Sydney. You nicked a magnificent bronze medal in the finishing straight. At one point, I thought you were actually going to win the race, but, you just didn't have quite enough petrol in the tank. But I go back to a few weeks before Athens, and I can't even remember where it was. I was watching you run an 800 meters, and to use sort of horse racing parlance, I've always fancied myself a bit as a predictor of form. And I looked at your run that day and I thought, the basis of good 1500 meter running is 800 meters. You look so confident and so poised during that performance. I thought, hello, we could be in for something very special in Athens. And I had the opportunity as a council member of the IAAF of picking one medal ceremony to be a part of. And I thought, I'm going to take a punt here and go for you in the 800 meters. And obviously that paid off. But I guess that's a long-winded intro to saying, did you leave for Athens with as much confidence that I felt and just expressed from watching you in the stand just a week or two beforehand?
Well, I think that might have been Crystal Palace, because I do remember, it was you or somebody had said, they'd seen me race this race. And going into Athens, we had our holding camp in Cyprus. So obviously that's such a great build up for any athlete. When you go into that holding camp, you're almost into that mindset, aren't you, of, okay, this is something now you've got to start to focus on. And when I was in Cyprus, do you know what? Everything just seemed to click. Because it was the first year in 7 that I hadn't had an injury. I'd fallen in the world indoor champs, but I kind of almost blanked that off of my head. So I was just, every race I did, I really enjoyed. But the 800, I was winning everything, but I was losing every single 1500 meters that year, because I feel like I was putting so much pressure on myself to achieve my ultimate dream, what was to be Olympic 1500 meter champion. After watching you as a 14-year-old, I keep saying this is your embarrassment bit, watching you come across, and you were my idol. And, so going into...
Move on, Kelly.
You love it, really. Going into Athens, I was just in such a different mindset that, do you know what? I have to go out there and believe in myself that I could come back with 2 medals of any colour. That was all that was in my head, that I'm in the shape of my life. I knew how to race. I knew my opposition. I knew what I could achieve, and that I had to go in there and do my best. But winning the 800, you've seen my face. You know what it was like. I was so shocked. I didn't believe ever that I would win an 800 metres gold medal.
Kelly, I can give a little bit of flavour here, because I was lining up to, I think, give you the flowers at the medal ceremony, and you were about to get up onto the rostrum with your spikes on, and I had to actually sit you down and physically untie your laces and sort of suggest you might put your road shoes on before you sort of got planted in the top of the rostrum without being able to move, and you were still in a complete state of shock. It's one of my treasured memories of any athletics event I've ever been to.
Oh, and you know what? From the other side of that, seeing your hero taking your spikes off, Seb, you had no idea. I was a quivering wreck the fact that I was going to go out into this rostrum and receive an Olympic gold medal, but then I've got my hero on his knees taking my shoes off. You have no idea.
Well, you've no idea how much... How much teasing I got from my daughters who'd say to me, "Dad, you don't take my shoes off when I come back in the evening."
No,
they were two, in a way, they were races that had significant similarities, because my recollection of both those races is you were foot perfect in both. You didn't follow crazy pace at the beginning. You sat in, you just watched from a sensible vantage point, and then you just picked up the pieces in the finishing straight and closed the door on some outstanding competitors of your generation.
Yeah, and I think, through experience, you understand where your strengths are as an athlete, don't you? And you also understand where maybe you've made mistakes in the past. And I feel like for the first time, and maybe I say for the first time, but just because I was completely in tune with what I wanted to do. I wasn't nursing an injury. I wasn't fighting to get back, where your mind is consumed with all of those thoughts that it's all going to go wrong. All I had was, I'm here to race and this is how I need to do it. And so I'd sat down with my coach before and, with my team and said, I feel like how I was training in Cyprus was that I was just running even pace running and trying to perfect being as even as I could and as comfortable as I could as an even pace. So realistically, all I did was split up the 815 into 200 metres and try and run as even as I could. And what happened was, I only see it after I've actually run it, when the gun goes in at 800 metres, as you break at the 100 metre mark round the bend. And I was way at the back. And I just remember one split second of my head thinking, shit, I was so far off the pace. But all I had in my head was stay in control. Because they're running 25, 26 as a woman for 800 metres. And I was running sort of 28, 29. But I knew I had to run 1 minute 56 to win a medal. So all it was is that the ability to stay composed to what I'd been training for and not let it go wrong in a race, which, when you get to a race, sometimes your head just goes all over the place, and it was just that I was composed.
We all go into races with tactics and strategies, but the reality of it is with 8 or 9 other athletes, the variables become almost, so unpredictable. But I'm fascinated, as you know, I'm always fascinated by the mental side of performance. And for me, the great achievement of your double was not winning the 8 and or then going on to win the 15. It was the mental hinterland around that, because you, of your own volition, have admitted that you just went there to get a medal. You'd had profound disappointment and injury leading up to that. You then win something which, your own words in your book, was something you'd been dreaming about for 20 years. You then have to not bounce back from disappointment, but bounce back from a lifetime achievement to then do it all over again. And believe me, Kelly, I have a feel for this. I tried this on 3 separate occasions and I came 1 medal short on each occasion. But you were foot perfect, not just in the races, but I sense that you were foot perfect between the races, which mentally is a massive accomplishment.
Definitely. I think, what people don't obviously see is everything else that goes into performing. So they see the outcome on the track. But, once you've done your heats or your semi-final, you've got to go through a process of getting back into the same mindset to come out and do it again. And so actually, we all talk about being in the zone, but I absolutely believed I was so in tune with everything I needed to do to not let myself down and other people around me that had supported me, that I had to stay in there. And just very quickly, you go back to Sydney. So when I won the bronze medal, it was off the back of only 6 weeks on the track. The rest of it was in a pool and a gym, because I had a 12 centimetre calf tear. So when I went into that and I got bronze, which was like a gold at that time, I'd actually also went and run the 1500 metres. And I got to the final and my head just went all over the place, because all I could think about is I'm Olympic bronze medalist. And I remember my coach at the time, Dave Arnold, was so upset with me, like literally so upset. He said, you could have won another medal, but you lost it because all you were thinking about is the glory of that other one. And I never forgot that. And so when I went into Athens and I was in the shape of my life.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And when I went into Athens and I've won the gold medal and who was it now? Oh gosh, my brain's going to go. Who said to me, Kelly, you have just become, one of the best athletes in the world, but if you win 2, you become a legend. And I was like, don't even talk to me about that, just shut. But I just I have to say, the process was, I'm going to run the race, get off the track, give Sally Gunnell my bottle of water, my cashew nuts, because I wanted to refuel and rehydrate as soon as I come off the track. And she was BBC commentator, so I'd come off, I'd go through the chicane of TV, and literally I'd planted it on her. And then the team doctor Brian at the time was at the end of that chicane with my bag. I'd made up a protein shake and I'd wrapped it, make sure no one gets into it. I'd wrapped my protein shake. I had a bar of like an energy energy bar, another bottle of water. So by the time I'd gone through the radio, it was first, then down the line of all the press, I did everything. Like literally, I'm refueling within 10 minutes. So I didn't care then what time I got back and had my meal. And I think people underestimate the other things you have to do to be on form. So your mindset, your actual delivery, your focus on the track, it's all those other bits that contributed. And because it felt so good doing it and I was feeling so good, I just got that confidence around me that, do you know what, go out there and run, don't let anyone down, don't let yourself down. And in the 1500, I can honestly say I never went out to win. I went out to run as good as I did in the 800.
I've always had the theory, Kelly, that if you get it right for 800, then actually, some may disagree with me on that, but if you get it right for 800, you get the basic speed endurance, and 800 is the toughest event on the track, I think, for all the reasons you've just explained. Then by and large, the 1500 metre follows. And I just sensed at that period that you were in that purple patch in a career where, when you step out onto the track, you're just not going to lose. And worse than that, there are the competitors around you start thinking, well, I'm running for second or third place here. Sadly, it's not a period that lasts very long in your careers. No. If you can hold it for, even a few months at a time, then it's fantastic. I was just smiling when you mentioned Sally Gunnell, because the next time you probably met Sally was when you won BBC Review of the Year at the end of that season, and she was one of the Magnificent Seven. I've got the list here. It was Mary Rand, Anne Packer, Mary Peters, Tessa Sanderson, Sally herself, and Denise Lewis, all women that had won track and field titles in Olympic Games. That must have been an incredibly special moment to be serenaded by that lineup of talent.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Anne Packer was the first British 800 metre Olympic champion, and she's saying something to you and you're just like, wow. And then obviously closer to time, Denise Lewis was a teammate of mine, and so was Sally in my early days. Yeah. But Sally actually had more of a significance on me than she even knew, because at my first Commonwealth Games in 1994 in Victoria, Canada, I was still in the military, and we were all sharing this big apartment, and there's Sally Gunnell, this is Olympic champion Sally Gunnell from 1992 and world champion and world record holder, and I'm in the same bloody apartment as her, and she comes out from the shower.
You do have to pinch yourself on those occasions.
Yeah, and she comes out the shower, and I'm so new into, kind of the Great Britain kind of team or the international scene, and we're competing for England, and she comes out of the shower and she went, oh, that was cold. And I was like, what were you doing? She went, oh, I had a cold shower. I was like, why? My love of cold and water is very well documented that I hate it. She comes out of the shower and she went, oh, it really reminds
me. You went on Mission Survival.
Oh, I nearly died as well. I nearly drowned. That's another story. Mission Survive. Oh my God. With Bear Grylls. Yeah, nearly died. Anyway, so she comes out, she says, oh, go in, it really flushes out your legs, blah, blah, blah. She went out and won the Commonwealth Games. I was like, sod that, I'm going in that shower. So I went in the shower, had a cold shower, and won the 1500 metres.
Look, we, in this wonderful podcast series, because it's an absolute honour to speak to all of you, I chatted to Phil Knight, the founding father of Nike, the other day. And he described Nike as a 56-year overnight sensation. Now, the area I want to sort of slightly interrogate with you is, look, I'm sure that for those of us, I'd watched you from the age of 14 or 15 coming through the ranks. There's nothing overnight about an athletics career that ends up with an Olympic title, 2 Olympic titles. But I'm guessing that your Athens appearance really, and what you achieved, really did completely upend your world in a way that nothing previously had done. How did you deal with that?
Well, I suppose in a way, I don't know if it's lucky or unlucky, because now, it's so different, but we didn't have social media. I mean, Facebook only started in 2004.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's slightly different. However, it was very meaningful because, you come back into Great Britain, you know what it's like. You come back and everybody's, loving the athletes that they've watched. And that was very special and very different. But what was so surreal about it was that, I come back to the village that I'd literally lived all of my life. And it was like I was this superstar, this kind of person that was now untouchable, that had, they'd forgotten that I was just this, little scraggly girl with an afro that used to run around the park in their thing. Suddenly you're propelled into, kind of a world that's so unreal in terms of your mindset. And I never competed in sport to have anything other than win my gold medal. I can honestly say I used the song If I Ain't Got You by Alicia Keys as my Olympic song, and everything was about if I haven't got medals. I don't want glory, I don't want this, I don't want that, I just want my medals. And so when you come back to everybody knowing your name, like I had a homecoming parade in my village, and what happened is that this homecoming parade was set up by the council. And my brother lives probably 3-4 miles away from me, and he came up to my mum's. I was living with my mum at the time because I just assumed I was going to go in the same roller coaster ride as you do. You come back from the games. I've been injured. I'll get over it. I'll go back training. I just thought it was going to be like that. But I come back as a double Olympic champion. Anyway, at the day that they were going to do this big parade, my brother comes up and I could overhear him in the kitchen saying, "Oh, there's not many people down the town." But by the time it had come, I'm coming on this bus in my village. It was crazy. I mean, people were jumping out of places. And,
I remember.
And the final police report was 80,000 people. I mean, how? For just a Kent girl, It was so weird. And
it wasn't long after that you invited me to your school.
Yes.
And I remember walking in there. It was like, it was celebrity status multiplied 1,000 times. It was extraordinary. Kids hanging off wall bars and classroom,
Yeah, it was
classroom
incredible.
walls. I mean, it was extraordinary.
It really was, and when you're swung around by Elton John at the Royal Variety Show, you're just presented to like a girl band. As you do, and he comes in and you're swung around and you're just like, what is going on? It's little things like that become very surreal. But, like I say, it's very different to the social media world. As an area changes, you are an absolute hero. Kind of everybody around the world knew you and your biggest rival, Stephen Beck. Everybody knew you, but they knew from TV. They knew you from TV and radio and papers. And that was the same for me. They knew me through TV, radio and papers. It's very different now, isn't it?
It is entirely different. And in a way that sort of segues nicely into an area that I know I'm keen to understand a little bit more about. And I know you are very keen to talk about, because you used the Athens platform as an opportunity to talk about mental health, some of your own mental health issues. I'm guessing that platform gave you or just gave you permission to do that, but it was such an important platform, not just for young athletes coming through those challenges, but for young people in all walks of life.
Yeah, and people, to be honest, because so when I first talked about my mental health was in an autobiography, like you do, and no one actually knew about anything that I was going through happening, no one in sport. And I felt like the book that I wanted to write was to be as honest as I could about the sporting journey. So a lot about my life and how I grew up and everything, and the sporting journey to the success, but also say the real side of that it's not all easy, and it's hard and we're human and everything. And having had what I had was, I honestly say the biggest success of my Athens was actually coming through what I went through in 2003, to come off the back of a breakdown, depression, becoming a self-harmer just before World Championships, and still standing on a rostrum in silver medal and no one knowing what I'm going through. And you might remember this champs actually, and I don't really talk about this much. There was this champs where, because I'd trained that year with Maria Matola, and everyone was going, why you know, how can you be training with Maria Matola? How can you be training with your rival? And there's all these innuendo and these, you know, kind of things around, you know, you must have been running together. And in my head, when all the press is doing this and talking complete rubbish, I'm thinking, you have no idea what I'm going through right now. And I was going through a breakdown. I was going through depression. I had been self-harming in the holding camp leading up to those world champs, and all the others were so fickle about it, but I didn't say a word because I didn't know how to. We didn't talk about mental health. So when I then won my 2 gold medals after getting the team around me, Ali Rose, Zara Hyde-Peters, you know, the Brian English, everybody that I really trusted around me, coming out and doing what I did, which I believe is fate. I believe I put everything into my life to do what I did, and it was the first year in 7 that I actually became the athlete I should have been for many, many years. Coming off the back of that, writing my autobiography, being very open and transparent, it still wasn't really talked about. And it was only in 2017 that I went on a TV show, and I was talking about, you know, kind of... they were just asking about health and depression, and I started talking about it again. It was almost like I'd never spoken about this. And I was just like, the reason is you weren't listening back then. People weren't listening. It was on the front of a newspaper, and almost like, oh my God, how can a champion be that bad? Let's hide it. Otherwise it makes her look like she's not as good. And I thought, no, do you know what? It's my platform to now talk openly. And because in life, it does not matter who you are. You can all struggle, and most people hide the struggle, but they come out because they don't give up. They come out because they still believe in themselves, and that's the only difference.
Look, I read with great interest in advance of this podcast many of the things that you've talked about in mental health, and I think it's incredibly candid, and I know hugely helpful for people like yourself to be comfortable about talking about that. And there's one quote here that I think I'm sure you would think that it's absolutely central advice. And it's this quote: reach out to people you know. They would be distraught if they didn't know what you were going through. And I think that for young people, I know you've created, you've become a mental health first aider. You've actually started, I'm not sure where you've got to with this, but I know you're working on an app to help people come to terms with some of those challenges. It's really become a central theme in your life now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. I always thought that, when you're a kid and you've got dreams, that your destiny is that dream, and if you do it, that's it. But I actually believe, without sounding too that was almost like part of my journey, and my destiny, my true destiny is how can I help and affect and change opinions of people through positive mindset, but also through realism that you're a human first, and then naturally you're going to go through struggles. And if I can inspire people through that, that's what I try and do. So the trust was set up for lots of different reasons, and we help disadvantaged young people, and obviously the athlete transition for the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust. But it's also now very apparent, and especially during this time, the mental health issues that we see in society and communities of disadvantaged young people. So it's really become a thread through everything that I've either started or I do. And then the app's called Alpha at Work, and it's because I stand on stage globally to hundreds or thousands of people sometimes, and I tell them about my story, but I feel like, well, I can just talk, and you would stand, any one of us, especially in sport, can stand on a stage and give real kind of stardust and inspiration, but then we go. And how do you actually then keep those messages going? So I just formed this app that goes into the workplace, and only launched it in lockdown, actually, to First PLC. And so I'm trying to get that out because it's got about mental health, wellbeing and fitness. And the two tools for helping your mental health are fitness, being active, any form of fitness, and maybe something you enjoy, and communicating and talking effectively. And that is why I put this quote around the fact that I didn't tell anyone what was happening to me, and they read it in a book. And my parents, my friends who I'd known all my life, were devastated and not disappointed in me.
Well, we had no idea.
No.
Kelly, we had no idea, me included. I mean, I thought I knew pretty much about everything about your athletics career, but I had no idea that you were going through those traumas as well.
No, and that's the thing. And they were so disappointed, but not disappointed in me. Like they were saying, we would have been here to help you. We just feel like we were powerless. And I just said, I couldn't tell you, I didn't know how to, but I always advocate to people. We all have somebody that will listen and is there for you the moment you ask for help.
And I guess that sort of mutual support and that belief that, you're always better as a team was drilled into you in your army years. I know you're incredibly proud of your army career, which is, as I said in my opening remarks, you've now become honorary colonel of the Royal Corps Training Regiment. I mean, you must be proud as punch to have ended up doing that. I mean, I think that's quite a unique title, isn't it? In that sphere.
Yeah. So I was given that title the end of 2018, and actually, there was a change in army policy, and it had to be signed off by the Queen, because I was the first person to ever be attached to a regular unit, a regular working unit as an honorary colonel. Normally you're attached to like a reservist unit. So I was really proud of that, first and foremost. And secondly, because of being proud of my nearly 10-year career in the military, that attachment back. And I do a lot on mental health with my role now as an honorary colonel. I suppose the fun thing is that, I rock up now where I can have this undercut, long hair on one side, they can't say a thing, and I get saluted and be called ma'am. I mean, I was the one having to do that in my career, Seb.
And the height of the heels, Kel, as well.
That's it.
But actually, in the first lockdown, you set up Military in Motion, which is a sort of, it's a friendly community of like-minded people who supported each other during that period and taking part in some fairly devilish challenges. I did privately try a few myself. I know how I felt towards the end of the day. Tell me a bit more about just a bit more about that and this element of community that matters to you, doesn't it? It really, it's not just a word you use, it's what you live to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like there's so many people in life generally, in society, all trying to be that best version of themselves, all have hopes and dreams. And some people just don't either have opportunity or just can't find that inner fire in their belly that we're very fortunate as athletes to have. And a lot of people want to keep fit or they think they need to keep fit and they want to be healthier. And so during lockdown, because I wasn't travelling all over the world and I've always been into my fitness and I'm a qualified PT and everything, I thought, do you know what? I'll just do some sessions online. It's the first time I've ever done it. I wasn't really interested in doing it. Then, you start getting the comments from people, this is helping me. I'm isolated, or I haven't trained since school. I'm overweight. You start hearing all of what people talk about, their inhibitions, how embarrassed they are, all of those things. And it just started building a momentum where I just said to people, look, you're on here. I said, right, we're going to start going from Instagram story onto Zoom. I want to see you. And then I said, the only reason you can come on here is you turn your camera on. And I said, don't care about what anyone else thinks of you, because they're not leading your life, they're not living your life, and it is built into something I never imagined would happen. These people all become friends. They're kind of virtual friends in real friends in a virtual world who are now starting when they can just to meet up, and they're all from all over the country. And actually, I've got a few overseas as well, and I love it. I absolutely love it because it's not something I'm earning money from. It just pays itself. If somebody does a 5K race, they buy a medal, the medal's spent. I absolutely love that I am, and by their words, transforming their lives, because they've never felt so good about themselves in both body and mind. And I tell them, and the biggest thing I do have my army and my athletics head on when I'm coaching them, because I'm like, you're not here to work out, you're here to train. So, and by training, you train hard. I want a full commitment from you in body and mind.
I have seen some of these exchanges. Slightly worrying. Listen, you have an interesting upbringing. You were brought up in a council estate in Tunbridge, What were some of the challenges you confronted navigating your way as a young athlete through the Byzantine world of athletics and making your way through the sport?
Well, I think the appropriate thing to talk about at the moment is, when people are talking about Black Lives Matter and whether that during sport was an issue to me or wasn't an issue to me. And I think the way I kind of try to explain it is that there's culture and there's upbringing, life generally. And I was brought up in Kent with a white mother, a white stepdad, white siblings. I went to white schools. Everyone around me was white. I had no other knowledge of anything. And my biological father, his family were in London, they're Jamaican. But I had no connection at all with him.
No framework of reference.
Nothing at all.
Yeah.
So culturally, I'm white. Culturally, I don't know any different. So people can look at people and put every person in the same box. And this is some of the conversations I've been having recently to corporates around the Black Lives Matter, is that what you have to do is remember that when you are talking or you're looking or you're whatever at white people, you don't ever categorise white people. They're all these people and whatever. Whereas when you talk to people of colour or people who are black or whatever, it's almost like everyone's under the same umbrella. But I don't know what an African heritage is, a Jamaican heritage is. I don't know. I just don't know it. And so was I bullied at school? No, because I ended up having the attitude, and I don't know where it came from when I was very young, that if I'm different, I'm unique, and that means I stand out, and that means I'm not the same.
Everything I know about you, Kelly, is you're not an obvious bully victim. You're not going to be an obvious victim of bullying. That would be a bad career move for anybody.
Well, hopefully when I was younger, it was just my smile that let it go. Now it's probably with my army head on. But, I never had that. So I remember in athletics, and I will say this because it's only really come, at the age that I am now, which I'm really mortified by, but 39 plus, I have to start... baby. I have to start putting in questions in my mind that I've never, ever had to think about when people are asking about this situation, because I've just lived life as I am. I'm just me, Kelly, I don't care. I just get on with it. And it's only because there's more conversation I've had to really think about maybe my ignorance with this conversation as well as other people's around people do get bullied for their colour, just for the colour of the skin. They don't even know who they got brought up by, who their heritage is, what their culture is. They're just getting bullied because the colour of their skin. Now, I'm Dame Kelly Holmes, so maybe I'm not, but if I think back, have I actually? Probably I have been. Probably I have had jobs not given to me, circumstances where I've had problems with people because of the colour of my skin, or maybe other things. But I have to think about that. And I do remember in athletics, Denise Lewis, Michelle Griffiths, like lots of the older athletes that are around. I remember once, it was juniors, we were all together, and we were sitting around this table, and everybody was either black or mixed race. And I'm sitting there, and it's all going around one by one. How do you feel? How do you feel? And they were all going to me, what do you think then? Because you've got white parents and that. And I thought, oh my God. And I felt like I stood out like a sore thumb because, I don't have anything that they were talking about. I just didn't get. And it almost made me feel a bit kind of intimidated that I wasn't part of them. I felt separate, even though I'm sitting there the same colour. So what people have, the end of this conversation really is for me to say, in sport, the best thing about sport, especially athletics, so let's take it away from football and things, but in athletics, I don't believe there's much discrimination that I've ever witnessed to do with colour, culture, ethnicity.
Kelly, I would go further. I can't think of another sport where there's more reason to celebrate diversity than in athletics. I mean, the powerhouses, the individual competitors, the powerhouses of our sport demonstrate exactly why we are so diverse. And, we are a colourblind sport, and thank God we are. Yeah,
and I love that. And maybe not even the colourblind, I think we should be colour focused to recognise
that's a better expression.
That we're all so different, but we all live together and we all do what we're trying to do, be the best that we can be at our sport. And that's what I love about athletics. And that's where, when I have a reference point, I do talk about athletics in that being a really positive part of my life to be part of.
What words of inspiration? Look, I've heard nothing but words of inspiration from you during our conversation. But what if I asked you to synthesize a few words of inspiration for a young athlete that is, I hope, listening to this podcast? What would they be?
Trying to think of some of the. I do all these different quotes and they're just things that come out of my head whenever. But there's some things that I put in there. I put those that give up will never make it, and those that carry on just might do something incredible. And for me, if only is too late. And just always believe in yourself can take you further than you ever really thought you could get.
I'm writing them down now. Okay. They'll even work for a sort of 60-something. Let me just take you to something. I mean, we started on a point of topicality, COVID-19. It's been the great disruptor. Athletes last year had to come to terms very abruptly and rather brutally that the games that they thought they were preparing for, and I'm sure most people think that you only sort of wake up in an Olympic year and think, oh, the games are in July. What people tend to forget is training blocks are often built around an Olympic Games 5, 6, 7 years earlier if you're working with the types of coaches that you and I were lucky enough to work with. What advice would you give now to the athletes that have lost that season? We managed to get a few races towards the end of the year in Diamond League and some Continental Tour. But what advice would you give athletes going into the coming preparation phase, knowing that they missed their big chance last year, and how do they hold it together over the course of the winter months?
So just readjust, treat it like it was an injury. Treat it like you've got another opportunity and a chance that maybe you would not have got. Take the positives out of it. What can you do to be even better than the year that you may have had? I feel like sometimes I have to talk to different sets because you've got the young athletes that have still got many, many years to perform. And, this is just a blip in their career, that those that take it like that as a setback, but work through it in a positive realm, maybe changes that they could have made, maybe things that actually they've got more time to work on. Definitely put it as a positive to start with. Also realise that if you do get to those games and you're lucky enough to still be in the team, you're one of the lucky ones, because there's so many that had to retire after this year. This is their last Olympic Games they're ever going to get to. They can't last for another 4 years, so actually those athletes have to kind of have in their head that they've still got an opportunity to perform. They've still got an opportunity to do good. And what we have to remember is that we have a 4-year cycle and there's a championship every year. So this is almost like every year should still be another big championship that you're getting ready for, whether it's a world championship or Europeans or Commonwealth Games. It's just another year. So yes, you might have missed this year, but it doesn't mean you miss having that focus. It doesn't mean you stop believing in the journey. Doesn't mean you don't refocus, reset and go again. It's just a year that was really unfortunate, but there's nothing you could have done about it. It was out of your control. So you just have to pick yourself up. And the ones that are going to succeed next year are the ones that get through this period the best. The ones that have picked themselves up, just brushed it off and gone, okay, I'm ready to go again. Yes, disappointment. You can't do anything about it, but you can do everything about getting ready for next year.
Kelly, I think there's fantastic read across, not just for athletes that have been dispossessed from their year, but for young people who have been studying, where schools have been closed, universities have been closed, and people that have really struggled in their own employment areas. I think that's a great piece of advice. I've had to romp through this interview quickly. I mean, I would love to have spent hours chatting to you, and I'm lucky enough, I know there will be those occasions when I can. But I've run through a lustrous list of achievements. Is there anything left that I mean, it might be absolutely out of left field. It doesn't have to be athletics or, crazy challenges. Is there anything privately that's left that you would just love to do?
Yeah, I suppose you're always trying to, it was a weird word, but reinvent yourself, really kind of prove who you are. And all I wish for is that whatever is out there in society, if they can see me as a person that can have hopefully an impact on whoever it is that I'm working with or involved with, that I can help them with mindset change, help them with positivity, help them with growth mindset and, believing in yourself. And I don't think that doesn't matter what industry it is, to be honest with you. So for me, it's about just hopefully continuing to do what I do, and, stop people. Maybe people only see me as the athlete that won 2 gold medals and has achieved a lot of other things. But, I feel like I hope I can impact and make long-lasting impacts on people in whatever sector that is. And I just need more exposure to continue to do that so that I can reach more people.
Colonel Holmes, believe me, you've made that impact. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Extraordinary Tales in Extraordinary Times, brought to you by CSN.